What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and I gotta be honest with you guys. I recorded this video last night like an idiot. I recorded it, I uploaded it to my Google Drive, and then usually send it out to one of the kind people that help me edit some of my videos. It was a busy day yesterday. I grinded 2 videos, and as I uploaded that video to Google Drive, I fell asleep. So now we are here, Thursday, around noon. Now we have to record the video all over again, but it is fine. We've been given new information. We're going to be even more thorough this time. Today, we're going over my top 24 running back rankings for week 9 of the fantasy football season. We're going to put them into tiers. Now, this is assuming 0.5 PPR. So if you're in PPR, put the pass catching backs like DeAndre Swift and Eckler a little bit higher up. Standard, take those guys a little bit lower, put the guys like Nick Chubb a little bit higher. But what's really important here is the tiers, because you can kind of fluctuate whatever you want between the tiers, right? But where I feel really strongly at this point in the week are where the tier breaks are, right? So if you have 2 players in 2 different tiers, then bang, you know who to start. If you have 2 players in the same tier, then you can there's a little bit of wiggle room to kind of make start-sit decisions at your own leisure. Because I'm kind of a big believer that not every start decision is black and white. It kind of depends, how you feel about a player, what range of outcomes you need to win that week. Now, before I ramble any further, I want to get right to the point. Let's not waste any more time. Make sure you subscribe and leave a like if you enjoy what you see in this future film here for you guys. Now, with that being said, let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag.
All right. Here we are, the tier list. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 7 different tiers this video. This might be the most tiers I've had because I do feel strongly about certain divides between these 24. And in the S tier, finally, this is the first time that he will be at the RB1 across all of my rankings. Now, by the way, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. That's going to have all of my weekly rankings, running backs, wide receivers, super flex. If you have a running back and a wide receiver start-sit decision, I have flex rankings there. 0.5 PPR, PPR standard, all of that good stuff. Finally got approved by Fantasy Pros, so I literally can make rankings across the board for weekly. I can make weekly rankings across the board that fit your league. Now, with that being said, the first time I've ever put him at running back 1 on a week is Jonathan Taylor, the man who plays tonight. He now has a million 20-plus point weeks. He has 5 20-point weeks in a row right now. And what's amazing is that he is like that Cordarrelle Patterson corollary that we keep talking about, right? Where these players are not stagnant. You don't get 65% snap share through 3 weeks and then it stays like that. If you get a 65% snap share through 3 weeks, but you're balling out, your coach is going to see that and you're going to get more volume as the season goes on. So these snap shares and volume isn't stagnant. It's also influenced by play. And because Jonathan Taylor is balling out of his damn mind, he has a snap share of 65% 3 weeks ago, then 69%, then 74%. It keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. They keep riding Jonathan Taylor. And tonight, sadly, they go up against my New York Jets. They're going to be at home. They're like a billion-point favorites. I want to say they're like minus 10.5. They're going to kill my Jets. And don't get me wrong, I love the Jets. Mike White has been putting his magic on. I hope we see a close game. I hope that Mike White does his thing, but there is a chance that we see Mike White, become human and just the backup quarterback that he is meant to be. And I kind of just see the Colts running all over us, essentially. Jonathan Taylor is probably going to have like 100-plus rushing yards tonight, but I have him on a lot of fantasy teams, so I'm going to be cheering him on just as I would any other week, I guess. Which brings us to our RB2 in the S tier, Austin Eckler, who now is my running back 1 rest of season. With Derrick Henry out, he is the leader in points per game right now. And this isn't really a special matchup. He's going to be in Philadelphia. He has 2 top 3 finishes in his last 3 games. The Eagles allow the 8th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, so I think that he probably just runs wild here. And then we have Dalvin Cook, who is a part of this S tier cohort, I guess you could call it. And he's going to be in Baltimore, which isn't really a pretty matchup on paper. But the Ravens are quietly not that good against the run. They're allowing the 9th most fantasy points to opposing running backs right now. And even though Dalvin Cook hasn't exploded like he usually does, Dalvin Cook is getting really good volume. He's been getting 18 to 30 carries in his 4 healthy games, and the usage is there. It's just a matter of him hitting an efficiency spike. And if you still believe that Dalvin Cook is a premier running back in the, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry tier of, pure runners, and Jonathan Taylor, I think, is up there now. Then eventually he will pop off. I think that he has such a safe floor with his usage that he also belongs in S tier. And then our last guy in S tier is Najee Harris, also there because of volume. He's going to be at home against Chicago. Chicago's defense isn't what they used to be. I don't know if you guys have seen. I've seen like videos on TikTok of like Eddie Jackson just looking absolutely washed. I don't know what's wrong with the defense, but they're bottom 10 in rush DVOA and fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. And Najee Harris's workload is actually insane. He leads the league in expected points per game. So he's not the leader in points per game because it's pretty. I was gonna take a dig at Najee, but he is getting the volume of a Dalvin Cook, but he isn't as talented as these guys in S tier. He isn't, in my opinion. I think that some Steelers fans or some guys that have Najee are going to come in my head with this. I don't think that you can say that Najee Harris is as talented as a Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones. If you want to put him in, he's not as talented as Nick Chubb, but if you want to put him in like the, Darrell Henderson tier of like talent, I think that's fine. And he's a rookie, so it's not even, we would have said the same thing about Jonathan Taylor last year, but because he has the volume, so he has like a 23 expected points per game, 21 expected points per game, but he's performing like minus 3.5 per game under that. Now you can say that's the offensive line, the Steelers, whatever, but he's pretty much just providing you with a really safe floor given his volume, which brings us to A tier. And the first running back in this, I was going to include him in S tier, but because of the situation that he's in right now, it's tough because Aaron Rodgers has COVID. Apparently, I don't know. Apparently he was hitting him with a little bait and switch on the NFL, telling him, no, I got my vaccine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden, he is not vaccinated. He tested positive. So the Packers are going to be running Jordan Love. And I mean, maybe Jordan Love is Patrick Mahomes, big arm guy taken in like the late first. Patrick Mahomes was like 10th overall pick. But I don't know. I'm not super enthusiastic about what they're going to do from an offensive standpoint, but I think that with Aaron Rodgers gone, they probably lean on the running game. So I actually do like A.J. Dillon, not as a top 24 option, but as like probably like a top 30, top 36 option. A.J. Dillon, I think they lean on the run. I think they lean on Aaron Jones a little bit here. Now the offense won't be as efficient, but I think the volume will make up for it. They're going to be in Kansas City. The Chiefs D hasn't been good this year. They just allow teams to make games that shouldn't be competitive like the Giants game last week. So I don't mind Aaron Jones as a top 5 play, but because of the Aaron Rodgers thing, he's not going to be an S tier this week. And then the same thing goes for Alvin Kamara. Similar situation where his quarterback is very much in flux. Right now we have no Jameis Winston. Sean Payton refuses to give any kind of tip on if it's going to be Trevor Siemian or Taysom Hill. If it's Trevor Siemian, that's pretty much fine for Alvin Kamara. I imagine he's going to be checking down and doing his thing with Alvin Kamara. But Taysom Hill is bad for Alvin Kamara. Last year, I want to say that Alvin Kamara, in games with Taysom Hill, he didn't get a crazy target share. Now, I don't think he's going to be a huge downgrade, but just there's a lot of uncertainty because we haven't seen what that looks like in 2021. So that's why we're moving him down a tier. He's playing against Atlanta at home at the Superdome. I think, is New Orleans the Superdome or is Atlanta the Superdome? I feel like Atlanta is the Mercedes Dome and then New Orleans is the Superdome. I don't know. I could be wrong. But Alvin Kamara is RB6 on the week, which I think is completely fair. The talent, he's extremely talented. It just comes down to what his quarterback play is going to look like this week. It is going to be interesting without Michael Thomas there because he's still going to be the focal point, even if Taysom Hill is at quarterback. I just want to see it for a week. That's all. Like, sue me. I just want to see it for a week before we put Alvin Kamara back into S tier, which brings us to Ezekiel Elliott, who's going to be at home against Denver. Not really a pretty matchup. Denver's defense is like, I wouldn't say they're not elite. They're solid. They play games kind of ugly. The thing is that they're 9.5 point favorites. So the Cowboys should probably shred this defense and then probably sit on a good lead and just run the ball with Ezekiel Elliott. The positive sign for Zeke at RB7 and someone that's moving up my rankings is Tony Pollard is less of a factor at this point. Last week he played his lowest snap share since week 1, and it was his first game without 10 or more carries since week 1 for Tony Pollard. So Ezekiel Elliott is kind of, holding off Tony Pollard at this point. Tony Pollard is more of a breather back than he is like a 1B at this point, or at least as of next week. We'll see how that trend continues, but I like Ezekiel Elliott moving forward. Kind of sad for my Tony Pollard shares, but it happens to the best of us. At RB8, we have Darrell Henderson at home against Tennessee, and this is a game that I can't stop talking about. I talked about it a bunch in the wide receiver video, But this is the highest over-under of the slate at 53.5. This is going to be a high-scoring game. At least we hope so. Titans versus Rams, high-scoring game. Darrell Henderson finished as a top 5 running back last week. I think that he comes out here. There's going to be tons of touchdowns. He probably punches one in at the goal line. I like him as a nice... Oh, geez, didn't mean to do that. I like him as a nice start this week. Then we have Nick Chubb in Cincinnati. That's not really a crazy good matchup for Nick Chubb if I can find him on this thing. But I think that we're going to see them go away from Ernest Johnson. We have to remember that a lot of us got... Now, I don't have Nick Chubb in a lot of places, but a lot of us got really excited that with Kareem Hunt gone, that Nick Chubb would assume this role. Because in my opinion, without Kareem Hunt, I think that Nick Chubb would be the same guy as like Dalvin Cook, where he's out there, he gets the bell cow of the workload. He's not an extremely good receiver, or even like Jonathan Taylor and Dalvin Cook, the way that they win, because they don't win in the receiving game. They win off of ultra efficiency between the tackles because they're so talented and they're getting so much volume. Or at least, let me actually say just Dalvin Cook, because Jonathan Taylor doesn't get like a ton of volume like that, or he has been recently. But you guys get what I'm saying. Nick Chubb without Kareem Hunt should be a stud in fantasy. So now we have a week without Kareem Hunt. The problem is that last week, Ernest Johnson handled a lot of work. He handled a lot of passing down work. He handled some of the goal line work, which was really annoying for Nick Chubb owners. But that's not Ernest Johnson's game, at least in the passing game. Like, Ernest Johnson isn't a receiving back. He runs like a 4.8. That was Demetric Felton before that. So I think that they were kind of just trying to get Ernest Johnson mixed in, one, because he was hot against the Broncos, and two, because Nick Chubb was like maybe still coming, like first game back from injury, you don't want to run him into the ground. But they lost that game against, who did they just lose to? I can't remember who they just lost to, but the Browns lost this week. So I think that they probably come back out here and they lean on Nick Chubb to, assume the bulk of the carries and come out here and actually, like, this is a huge game for them against the Bengals. So they need to come out here. They need to get a win. So I like them to lean on Nick Chubb, especially if they don't have Odell Beckham. Then our last running back in this tier is going to be Joe Mixon. And he doesn't have a great matchup. He's in the same game. He's going to be at home against Cleveland. But his usage has been good, just like Ezekiel Elliott, where we're now starting to see signs that he's taking over as the bell cow in this backfield. Samaje Perine has been really annoying for Joe Mixon, especially in the passing downs, right? So Samaje Perine, for whatever reason, it's insane to me, because Joe Mixon, I cannot stress this enough. Joe Mixon in college was a DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler level receiver. He was that good at receiving the ball in college. He actually played, for those of you guys that don't know, he played college ball alongside Samaje Perine at Oklahoma. Samaje Perine, fun fact, has the single game rushing yard record. Maybe it was against Kansas. A little college football trivia for you guys. But they played in the same backfield together, and Samaje Perine was kind of the bruiser, right? Like the Thunder, and then Joe Mixon was the Lightning, where he would get passing down work and split out wide and be the receiving back like an Alvin Kamara, like a DeAndre Swift. Now they're in the NFL, and it's the opposite. Joe Mixon is getting ran up the gut between the tackles, and you have Samaje Perine as the passing down back, which makes no sense at all. I have no clue what Zach Taylor is doing, but in their game last week against the Jets, Joe Mixon doubled Samaje Perine snaps, which is huge. Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon, because Joe Mixon was coming back from injury, so they were not splitting snaps, maybe like 60-40. And then this week, where Joe Mixon in the past 2 weeks, he was in the range of 50 to 58% of the rush attempts. Last week, he got all the way up to 88% of the rush attempts. Now, all this data is from Dwayne McFarland, utilization report. It's on Pro Football Focus. His work, insanely good, insanely detailed. I don't know how he finds enough time in the day to chart all these things out, but it's beautiful. But like I said, Joe Mixon, his usage is getting somewhere where it makes sense, where he's getting the bell cow work. So at a certain point, when we're looking at a fringe RB1 at RB10, you just kind of have to follow the volume at a certain point. Which brings us to RB11 in our next tier, Cordarrelle Patterson. And he's been getting bumps every week where, okay, well, now he's overtaking Mike Davis as the RB1. Now we have Calvin Ridley leaving. So he is pretty much a fringe RB1 moving forward for me on a weekly basis. And he's playing in New Orleans. And I completely understand New Orleans' run defense is really good, but Cordarrelle Patterson has a skill set where I don't think it matters, which is crazy to say, because Cordarrelle Patterson, out of nowhere, but because he's literally a wide receiver and a running back, if a team is bad against the run, then he can just split out as a wide receiver. He can get routes out of the backfield. So I think he's pretty much matchup proof, if I'm being honest with you guys. So that's why I like him at RB11. I think that he's going to get plenty of volume in this Atlanta attack. After Kyle Pitts, he is the next playmaker on this team. Then at RB12, this is a really small tier. These are the only two running backs that I'm like extremely confident as like back end RB2s. And this one this one like makes me want to throw up. Like I'm genuinely nauseous right now at putting this guy in B tier as RB12. He has done nothing this far to prove to me that he should be RB12. But I think that in New York at MetLife against the Giants, I think that this is a pretty good matchup for him. The Giants allowed the 7th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, and Josh Jacobs hasn't assumed a full workload because he's been hurt, but he was limited in his last game. Then he gets a bye, and now he's playing this week. Looks like he's practicing in full. As long as he's going to be full-time, he's going to be healthy, I think he comes out here and is a top 12 option. He just feels extremely safe this week against the Giants. I think he probably gets like 60 rushing yards and a touchdown, which then brings us to the C tier, which is essentially, the handcuff tier. And the first one is Kahlil Herbert. Now, he would probably be ahead of Josh Jacobs, maybe even in this tier if he had a better matchup, but he's going to be in Pittsburgh. This is a tough matchup. But with Kahlil Herbert, we know two things. One is that he is actually pretty good, which is insane. I didn't like him as a prospect coming out, and I don't think that anyone out there loved him as a prospect, unless if you're like a Virginia Tech homer. He was like a fifth-year senior that transferred to Virginia Tech in like his 5th year. I remember looking at his profile, just like I have him on some dynasty teams because he just was like free in rookie drafts. But in terms of his rookie profile, he's just somebody that is like kind of athletic and it has like decent size. But in terms of like production, he wasn't anything great. But I mean, he looks amazing. He had like 100 plus rushing yards on Tampa Bay, so he could go crazy against Pittsburgh. Last week he wasn't efficient. He didn't look that great, but he still got 25 touches. They are feeding this man Kahlil Herbert. I believe on the Bears, Damien Williams is dealing with some kind of injury. I don't think that David Montgomery is going to be back yet for this game, or at least in full for this game. So I like Kahlil Herbert as a fringe RB1. Then we have Elijah Mitchell, who is pretty much in the same exact boat. Him and Kahlil Herbert are essentially the same dude at this point. Just these handcuff running backs coming in, being amazing. He's going to be at home against the Cardinals, and he now has back-to-back games with 100 rushing yards, or 100 plus rushing yards, which is crazy. And this is a tough matchup against Arizona. Arizona's actually been really stingy against running backs and wide receivers in fantasy, but he's going to get the work. He just stays scoring touchdowns and running 100 yards. So I think that it's a reasonable enough ding to put him here at number 14. So I think that is absolutely fine for him. Then we have Damien Harris at RB15. He's going to be in Carolina, which again isn't a great matchup, but with these running backs, not all of them are going to have great matchups. You know what I mean? Like this isn't the start of the week. This is just kind of where I'm at. So like I said, this isn't a great matchup for Damien Harris, but he now has 4 straight games with 3 or more carries inside of the 10-yard line. He's 3rd in rushing touchdowns in the league. So he's just someone that you have to play at this point, even if you don't think that it's going to be a positive game script. The New England Patriots are just like, they just kind of outperform your expectations, I guess. Like last week, I thought that, okay, they were going to be behind with the Chargers, but they came out, they actually beat the Chargers, and Damien Harris played great. So no matter how you think the game script is going to go, Damien Harris is going to get his. Which brings us to the RB16, the New York Jets breakout running back, Michael Carter. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I didn't love him as a prospect. I thought that he was in a firm tier below guys like Javonte, Najee, and Etienne. I had him in the same tier as guys like Trey Sermon and Kenneth Gainwell. So he's pretty good. But he's broken out these past couple weeks. He has 12 plus points in 3 straight weeks. He just put up 27 as the RB1 on the week. Mike White loves to check down his ADOT last week, even though he threw for 400 yards and his average depth of target was like 4 yards. So he's going to check down a ton against the Colts. The Colts are very good against the run. So I honestly think that they're probably going to get behind. They're going to have to pass. And that's kind of the beauty of Michael Carter. You don't need him to do anything between the tackles. You just need him to be get like a 20% target share like he's been getting, and he'll get you there. The next running back that we have, running back 17, is going to be the first running back in D tier, and he'd be a lot higher if it wasn't for injury, but it's James Robinson, and he just got hurt. He has like a bruised heel. I don't think it's going to affect him too much, but I think he's going to be on a touch count, which means that we're probably going to revert back to early season James Robinson, back when I was a little bit lower on James Robinson, and he was mixing in with Carlos Hyde, and Urban Meyer was firm on getting Carlos Hyde into the mix. I think Urban Meyer is going to get Carlos Hyde as many touches as he possibly can. So for that reason, they're going to be at home against Buffalo. Tough matchup here. James Robinson's probably, like, I would just treat him the same way that we were treating like early James Robinson, like first 3 weeks when he wasn't getting a ton of work. and was being slightly efficient. Like, you're kind of just hoping that he falls into the end zone here with James Robinson. Then we have Chase Edmonds, who just has a nice safe floor this week in San Francisco. It's a tough matchup, but it's perfect because it's even money on the road. So it's going to be a very close game, which is perfect for James Robinson or Chase Edmonds because that works to his strength. If you want a neutral to negative game script with Chase Edmonds where he can catch passes out of the backfield and it's not just grinder carries at that point. So I like Chase Edmonds to, get himself some catches. We have AJ Green, I believe, is out. DeAndre Hopkins is dealing with his hamstring. If DeAndre Hopkins does not play, then we're looking at a pretty juicy matchup for Chase Edmonds where he could get a lot of targets because they'll probably be, if DeAndre Hopkins isn't there and AJ Green isn't there, they're probably going to be living around the line of scrimmage where we're going to see screens to Rondale Moore and screens to Chase Edmonds and then the occasional deep shot to Christian Kirk. So there's a couple of outs for Chase Edmonds to have some upside here. I think his reception floor will get him. I think that his reception floor puts him at a nice fringe RB2, which brings us to Zach Moss. Zach Moss is going to be in Jacksonville. I think that they're going to blow the doors off Jacksonville. The Bills are minus 14.5 point favorites, and he has such a juicy role because he doesn't have the majority of the touches like a bell cow, but he has what we want. So he has the passing down role. He saw 18% of the targets to Singletary's 3% of the targets last week. And he also got the lone carry inside of the 10-yard line last week. So he is the goal line back and he is also the passing down back, which gives him this perfect twist where even though he doesn't have the overall volume of getting, 20 plus carries or whatever like we want, he gets the concentrated touches that we're looking for. Which brings us to E tier with Chuba Hubbard. And Chuba Hubbard's extremely tough because we have a couple of things working against him here. One being Amir Abdullah. Amir Abdullah comes in, he commanded 19% of the targets to Hubbard's 5% of the targets. Before that, Hubbard had 11% of the targets. So we're now looking at a three-headed backfield between Chuba Hubbard, Royce Freeman, and Amir Abdullah. It's not quite as juicy as it was before. His matchup isn't great. We also now have Sam Darnold has a concussion, so we could have P.J. Walker playing quarterback, which would be bad because the offense wouldn't be as efficient, even though the offense hasn't been efficient under Sam Darnold since literally week 4. And then they're also going to be at home against New England. New England's defense hasn't been great this year, but they can also just come out here and give you problems. I imagine that if Sam Darnold plays, he literally, like that meme where like Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts, that was against Bill Belichick. I imagine that Bill Belichick will probably have a field day with P.J. Walker, so it is just a tough matchup for that offense overall. Then we have Darrell Williams here, and he's going to be at home against Green Bay. And I love Darrell Williams because he's not going to be someone that comes out here and like rushes for 100 yards, but he's going to get his touches. He had 13 carries for 49 yards last week, 6 catches for 61 yards last week, and he's always like a touchdown away from getting you like a 20-point game. And this game, you'd like to think that the Chiefs would just destroy a Jordan Love-led Packers. I want to say they're like favored by a touchdown, but they haven't been covering against anybody. They let everybody into games. So I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that they're going to kill the Packers and they're just going to lean on Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams will probably mix in. He'll get his passing down work. He'll get his goal line work, and he'll get there for you as a back-end RB2. Which brings us to another guy in that same mold that gets a huge workload, Devontae Booker. He has seen 15 or more touches every week since Saquon has missed time. He plays at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders' defense is kind of whatever. And at the time that I made this, we're assuming that Saquon is not healthy yet. There's stuff coming out that he might be on like the COVID list right now. He has the ankle injury from a few weeks ago. So I'm assuming that he does not play. Again, it's early in the week. It's Thursday. We have until Sunday to make these lineup moves. So again, extremely speculative here. Then we have F tier. And you could literally there's like 10 guys you could put here in F tier, which is why it makes it so tough because they're all honestly ugly names, if I'm being honest. At RB23, we're going with Boston Scott. He's at home against the Chargers. The Chargers are giving up the most fantasy, or not the most, I think it's like the third most fantasy points opposing running backs. They are the worst DVOA rush defense. They are awful against the run. They are giving up a bunch of fantasy points against the run. Boston Scott, for whatever reason, Nick Sirianni is riding this man. It makes no sense at all. Kenneth Gainwell, stud prospect. I loved him coming out. He doesn't necessarily have the size to be a bell cow running back, but he's extremely good between the tackles. He wins in all phases. Boston Scott is like this 5'5", 5'6", like Danny Woodhead, Darren Sproles archetype, and he is pounding him between the tackles. He played Boston Scott like a bell cow last week. In the first 15 snaps, he played all 15 of those snaps. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like in a neutral game script where they're not just blowing the doors off of Detroit. But Boston Scott this week is a playable back-end RB2, which brings us to our last running back on this list, RB24, Myles Gaskin. He's going to be at home against Houston. It's a really juicy matchup. They're giving up the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, the Houston Texans. But the Dolphins coaching staff refuses to let this backfield become less than 3. They literally were down to, so Malcolm Brown gets hurt. They get down to Myles Gaskin and they get down to Salvon Ahmed, which is completely, that'll do it. Those are 2 really solid running backs. Myles Gaskin, really good in the passing game. Salvon Ahmed, really good between the tackles. And they sign Patrick Laird off of practice squad. I didn't even know that he was still in the league. They took Patrick Laird off of practice squad and they gave him like 20% or more of the snaps. It was crazy. So they just refused to let Myles Gaskin be in a role. So he's this like fringe RB2, like RB3 with like boom bust upside in case if he like breaks something big, because he is a good football player that thrives in the passing game. It's just a matter of, usage, which they won't give him. Now, that's going to do it for us today, fellas. As always, you can find these weekly rankings down below in the description, in the comments. I has all my weekly rankings. I'm also doing a huge sweep on the Dynasty rankings. So any of you guys out there that play Dynasty, I'm literally doing a massive sweep across my top 250 Dynasty players this weekend. So that'll be really fun. But that's going to be that. Now, because this was kind of out of the blue, I'm going to go record this next video that we have for Friday. I'm going to make sure that this one gets up before the games kick off tonight. As always, I love you guys. We're really close to 7K. So if you have any buddies, you have any single women, single moms out there, love to get the female demographic on this page a little bit higher than like the 0.2% that it's at right now, fellas. As always, I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.